something with dead people. And so wherever you have people, you're going to have dead ones, and you got to put them somewhere. But in the urban environment, and this is mainly only in North America, but in our kind of urban environment, funeral service has become very commercialized since kind of the 60s. And I feel like with that direction, that's kind of really changed the tone of end of life, and it's become less about what are the emotional needs of a family who has lost a loved one, and it's become more focused on the transaction. Like do you want the precious Brazilian hardwood, or do you want the 10-foot tall granite monolith, and how much can we sell this family before we don't see them again? And I think that the role that a cemetery should play is helping a family to steward and process their grief, which can last months, it can last decades. Like, we're all on our own journey in this world. And so why we started this cemetery was to actually provide a setting that was welcoming, and hopefully families feel very comfortable here. They don't feel like we're going to be chasing them with a clipboard and an April sales promotion. We're about stewarding the environment and working with nature, and just helping people kind of process life and loss at their own speed. And so we're not a very large property. We're a little over 8 acres here. What you see is our property is everything inside of the tree line here. And from the get-go, the funny thing about starting a new cemetery is there's not a lineup of funerals waiting to get in. People will almost always go where they've gone before. So where the grandparents are is where the kids will put their parents, and so on and so forth. And actually, it was way more challenging to be considered as a burial or as a resting place for a lot of people out there. We really had to prove our vision and values, because a lot of people, like when we were brand new, we were just a blank field. We had to start by removing greenhouses and fruit stands and old planter boxes and concrete foundations. And so we were just a big open field talking about all these nice ideas, but people were like, okay, well, we'll come back in 5 years and see how you're doing. And so in the beginning, we knew that nobody was really offering green burial. Funeral service has been very traditional, and with that kind of traditional approach to end-of-life care comes a lot of sales. If you're doing green burial, you don't get to sell a $10,000 casket. And if you're doing green burial, you miss out on that $7,500 headstone and monument, or the big concrete liner that you can bump up to $5,000 or whatever. And so that's definitely from the corporate funeral providers. That's why they're not interested. And then there are logistics to working with the landscape that we had to do a lot of improvements to make this property suitable for green burial. The biggest one being, if any of you guys have ever dug a hole in the Lower Mainland, you get down 2 to 3 feet typically, and then you hit groundwater. And so this property is ideal because we're elevated. We're up on a bit of a hill here. And then when we built our roads, you'll notice, like, starting at our parking, it's on a slope. The north side of the parking lot is about 8 inches higher than the south side of the parking lot, and it's because we capture all of our surface water. The same way that you'll notice from here, the lawns are all slightly graded so that all of our surface water, the lawns get what they need. All of our pathways encourage drainage, and we're always adding features, pathways, gathering places each season. We spend winter and winter planning, and then spring and summer building them out. It's all geared towards capturing the surface water, and then we run it off to our back road there, which is by our green burial garden. I'll show you. And it goes through a crushed rock filtration system and then returns to the watershed. And so we can dig, by doing it this way, we've eliminated our water table on the whole property. So we can dig a grave, we can dig a hole 12, 15 feet down, and we don't hit groundwater. And that is how we're able to offer green burial. And a lot of cemeteries, we're the newest cemetery. Gethsemane, the Catholic cemetery, was the previous newest cemetery, and they're from the 60s, and it wasn't really on the radar back then. And so it's taken some elbow grease, but what we have seen is just by showing up and doing our best, like, we don't use any chemicals or pesticides on the grounds. We've really tried to work with the environment instead of, I mean, the place looks great right now, but Eric mowed it yesterday. But otherwise, we just kind of, there's no right or wrong way to working with nature. And so in our field, being funeral professionals and being really focused on ceremony and the emotional experience of laying somebody to rest and trying to include the family and include the survivors and having them help participate in restoring the earth or planting flowers or acknowledgements with personalized memorials, or in a lot of cases like memorial plantings with trees and the beehive program. We're on a journey of learning, and I feel like if your hearts are in the right place, then people really pick up on that, and they really appreciate it. And so I welcome you all today. We're going to talk a little bit about how far we've come with partners. Like, we've had a lot of support from Carly in the environmental Extravaganza program, is super cool, and then the Surrey White Rock Naturalist Society has been here. We're very grateful for the bat boxes and the bird houses that they've contributed, and just the overall awareness that they generate. But before we get walking, I'll just say that I think that the world, there's so much division that we see. Like, anytime you turn on the news or your Facebook or any social media or anywhere, like, there's just so much division and negativity out there. And I think overall a lot of people are really stressed out these days. And what I found, I grew up in a family that was big on the Rotary Club. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Rotary, but Rotary is all about service above self. And it taught me from a young age that the groups out there, whether it's a charity organization or like these community groups like Surrey White Rock Natural Society, the Little Campbell Watershed Society, we're really tight with the hatchery down there. A lot of the people who are actually making the world a better place are super underfunded, and they run on bake sales and volunteer hours and donations, and yet they're the ones who are rolling up their sleeves and actually putting the effort in. And so from the beginning, those are the people that we align with the most, and we're very grateful to have built up these relationships over several years, and we look forward to just continuing and seeing where all of this goes. I think when you get like-minded people together, then you can really see some beauty in the human experience. So let's go for a little walk. So Shirley, I didn't point out the bat boxes there, but I've been in the past, I've been pretty long-winded, so I'm going to try and pick this one up today so that we're not on our feet for the next 3 hours. I have not personally, but the shark, but Eric is the guy to talk to. He'll be in one of these bushes somewhere.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Hopefully you learned something today, if not already.
I have already done.
Excellent.
I'm sure there's more to come.
So do you want me to talk about the birdhouses in here, or would you like to speak to them? Nice. Okay. So as you look around, like, basically we did not start with this master plan. A lot of the property has evolved over years of just conversations and just taking tours with families, and a lot of people have really cool and interesting ideas, and if we think that that's something that other people would appreciate as well, then we've really tried to work it into the landscape. So memorial trees are a big one for us, and in the beginning, when I was still just the funeral director and knew nothing about trees, our first generation of memorial trees, which we'll get to, are like a ponderosa pine and copper beech and an American oak tree, and then I found out these are all going to be like 100 feet tall and about 60 feet wide, and I was like, this is going to be a very short cemetery lifespan if we let everybody do that. So our next generation of memorial trees, which we just come by here, is now we've started to plant them, and then families can come and choose one if they like it, and then let the family kind of plan whatever kind of memorial stone around their tree. Sometimes it's just a simple bronze plaque, other times the people will want the Taj Mahal, and we're just open to whatever's kind of unique and original. And then along the edge of our property, so as I mentioned, Hazelmere is just on the other side of this berm here, but we have this kind of landscape buffer bordering around our property. And so the White Rock Surrey Naturalist Society has placed birdhouses and the bat boxes all along the edge. So up there we have the northern flicker birdhouse just on the fir tree, and then throughout this area we're in the process of exploring exactly where our property line is in here. And so we've kind of pulled out all of the brush and the weeds. We're going to be working on a gathering space here. We're calling this the Glen, but we've got a couple of little birdhouses perched up there, and it's just kind of, I mean, I'd much lie on the ground to listen to the birds than 60th Avenue, right? And so as much nature as we can get out here. This is a good example of land that we've held back for future development. We let it grow wild into these pollinator meadows, and it is astonishing the amount of wildlife that these draw out. Like, we get all sorts of deer, we have lots of rabbits running around here, and then I don't see them, but I'm sure that there's raccoons around and coyotes.
Snakes,
turtles.
Yeah,
We had a tortoise cross the parking lot the other day. That was pretty rare. And then we've started seeing garter snakes again, which we haven't seen them since the very beginning when this place was an abandoned nursery. So it's pretty cool. And like, we used to believe that we had to mow everything and have it looking as good as possible. Like I said, we've hand-picked all of our weeds because we don't use chemicals and stuff. But when we did mow the entire place, there would always be somebody who walks out to the middle of the field and says, I want to be buried right here, like they're planting a flag. And we're like, well, that's not really a registered plot. Like, no, we don't know what we're doing. And they're like, I really, really want to be buried right here. And I'm like, why? Like, why does that? And so ever since we stopped cutting the grass, nobody walks into the middle of there and wants to get buried there. So it lets us kind of hold back some space for the future until we really put some thought into what can go there.
Hey, maybe show the flicker plaque here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. So back to what I said about the organizations that really make a difference, kind of surviving on bake sales and volunteer hours. So we've really, probably one of the biggest things that sets we've really tried to figure out how memorialization can have deeper meaning than just having a person's name or dates on it, because we think it's very significant. You need a focal point when somebody has passed away. This is probably the biggest reason that you can't walk 3 meters at English Bay without tripping over a memorial bench, is because there are countless people who have spread the ashes off of Stanley Park and the seawall, and you can have a beautiful afternoon picnic where you commit a loved one to the environment, and it's fine in the moment, but it's really hard to go back 2 years later and explain to the grandkids that dad is somewhere between the seawall right here and Bowen Island. And that focal point is really what, like a cemetery, of course we shelter the remains, but this becomes what the family interacts with going forward. And so when you get back to like processing grief and loss, it's such a personal journey that is not a one-size-fits-all, which is what one-size-fits-all is really convenient for the cemetery because it makes it easier to cut the grass. So throughout our grounds, this is a Northern Flicker memorial plaque here, and what this represents is a donation from the family back to the Surrey White Rock Naturalist Society. Or you'll see today some bronze salmon flags, and those represent a contribution made to the fish hatchery that's just a kilometer away. And it's been really cool because the families that want that type of memorialization are kind of in that similar mindset. They want to give back to the community, and now when they come and visit, which is pretty frequently, it's always a reminder of something positive. Like, we have no control when somebody we love leaves our life, and so giving the family the empowering them to memorialize their loved one in a way that's helping the environment or helping the community or just giving back to nature, it really goes a long way to them in terms of just kind of lifting them up a little bit. And so this is an example of one of our cremation gardens. We have 4 cremation gardens on the property. Anywhere that you see a bronze plaque, the ashes have been mixed into the soil. There's no urns buried here. And then the plaque goes on top of the ashes. In our very first cremation garden, a lot of people like the idea of burying the ashes and planting a tree on top, roses or any like flowering bush. But it turns out cremated remains are super salty. They're very alkaline, and trees don't like them very much. So we nuked our first 3 or 4 memorial trees, and then we stopped doing that. So now the plaque can go on the cremated remains, and the people choose a nice location in the vicinity of trees, bush, flowers, whatever they like, and then the tree will use as much as it likes, but it's not forced to live on top of your ashes.
Rotation process for that? I mean,
Great question. So yeah, that's a great question. We commit to the family that the plaque will be on the ashes for 15 years, and then following that, we have the right to move the plaques. For example, like in this garden, we might remove the plaques from the slate and set them onto the boulder backdrop so that we can turn the soil over. And because like the plantings won't last forever either. Like the tricky part about our legislation in BC is that cemeteries, the rules are written in language of permanence. So when you sell a burial plot, that is forever. And a lot of people, I mean, even 200 years would be a great deal, but forever is kind of silly. And so we're not like, I'd say, especially in my lifetime, land, the cost of land and the value of land has gone through the roof, and a lot of people these days, we're all in our own way, we're all examining our footprint and the kind of the weight of our decisions and how that'll affect future generations. And so especially when we're in this kind of ethereal struggle of land acknowledgement and the First Nation stewards who are here first, it's like, is it really the best idea to be dedicating cemetery land that will be permanently blocked off from any future occupants or anybody using it, down the road? Because once the cemetery is full by the letter of the law, well, now we just have to cut the grass forever and nobody else can use it. So with the
sometimes that's the only green space in the urban environment.
yeah, you're right. A lot of the European cemeteries have become the best parks in town.
Yeah.
But this is an example of how now the cremation gardens will, like, because BC has the highest cremation rate in North America. Hey, like it's about 9 out of 10 people, 90% will choose cremation. There's other reasons for that, but this is an example that the gardens will continue. Like, we can always be laying people to rest here. And I mean, I couldn't tell you our capacity, but the promise is that over 15 years, and we have 4 gardens now, we're gonna have more in the future. And so there will always be space for more cremated remains and turning over the soil. We rejuvenate the gardens about every 5 years right now, so we'll put the markers aside, we turn the soil, aerate, new bark mulch and everything, and then we place all the markers back. So we've really put effort into how can this property have a life beyond us. Like, we're the operators today. It might be my kid, it might be Andrew's kid in the future, it might be somebody we don't even know in 60 years. So we really want to set them up for a sustainable future of cemetery operations. And another consideration is about the burial site reuse. So because we do not require those cement vaults or fiberglass vaults that a lot of other cemeteries do, there is the possibility that the government could say, okay, you know what, 200 years after the last burial at Heritage Gardens, we're going to do something else with the property. Whether that's letting the descendants of the people laid to rest here use that. We don't know what that looks like. We just know that if you bury concrete vaults everywhere, you're kind of hamstrung for options. Yeah, that is definitely a permanent cemetery for us.
Yay, bee garden.
And there's very few days that I don't talk about NOR. Isn't that wonderful? No hope.
So behind us here just behind the beehives is a little split rail fence you can barely see, and then there's 2.5 acres of watershed that is now permanent conservation land that used to be our property, but in our rezoning and development, I mean, the slope kind of drops off here quite a bit, and there's, understandably, there's a bit of concern about having a cemetery right on the banks of such a precious spawning habitat and resource that the Little Campbell River is. And so in our rezoning, we dedicated 2.3 acres to the permanent conservation of the watershed there, because our whole objective was to work with nature and the environment. I grew up fishing. My grandpa taught me to fish as like a 3-year-old. I'm not trying to hurt the salmon. And so we thought, you know what? We can't really use that area anyways, and so why not have a big setback? The minimum legal setback, I think, is 9 meters or so from a water course, and we're about 50 meters, I'd say, at the closest point to the river down there. And so this is along the back corner of the grounds. We've done the most kind of eco-friendly interment spaces, and so you'll see, like, there's the Copper Beach Memorial Tree I was talking about. There's memorial trees all the way along here where families have just placed cremated remains into the garden at the base of the tree. And then in our early days, we got a couple of beehives out here. Like Andrew and my brother and I, we grew up in Vancouver. We barely had a backyard growing up, and so this is our first time managing property, and so we thought it'd be fun to get a couple of beehives. And we also started a little veggie garden because, like I said, there wasn't a lineup of funerals around, so we kind of had time on our hands. And what we quickly found was there was an amazing emotional connection to the beehives. Like, all these families that we talk about, oh, my grandpa had bees growing up, oh, my grandma always had tomatoes and carrots in her garden. And so these conversations with families like really took like a positive direction as we were walking the grounds. And so what this has evolved into is a beehive conservation memorial program. We're basically, now we're at 16 beehives. These are our east side bees. We got the west coast bees on the other side of the river there. Yeah. And all of the hives are sponsored in memory of a loved one from a family next of kin. And so those families come back in September when we do the harvest, and 80% of the honey generated by the hives, they'll jar it, and we make up labels like from Grandpa's bees at Heritage Gardens, or in memory of Mom from the bees at Heritage Gardens, and that becomes like a really nice kind of keepsake. Like, a lot of people, I know the families give it out at Christmas as a stocking stuffer, or just something that, like, a lot of families have struggled to talk to children about death and loss, and so we've really tried to provide a setting that is more about just like the heaviness of placing roses at a gravestone with your kids. Like, we want them to come out, and maybe the kids are going to see a deer or some rabbits that day, or they can just come and visit a beehive that they're part of supporting this program. And so we have found 16 is about our max capacity for pollinators. Translate into roughly there's about,
sorry, there's just a car coming. Do you mind just put on this side? Thank you.
And not like, most of our families have been pretty calm about the bees, but it is kind of funny. It is sort of foreseeable, but a lot of the time when you have a funeral, everybody brings flowers. And when you bring flowers, the bees are all like, oh, look, flowers. And so there have been a couple of services where people are like a little freaked out because too many bees come up. So we're like, 16 is enough. We're not going to get any more bees.
Pardon me.
Very rarely. Very rarely.
There's one on the stump now.
Yeah, there's the robins. The robins are relentless this time of year.
But they're great. They're,
The perching habitat.
yes, and for other birds, it's perching habitat as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we did is we had we drilled holes in those trees for the birds. I don't know if they've ever used them or not, but it's just a pattern for them to use.
Yeah, that's right. That is, yeah, good point. It's about the perching habitat. families in our early days were just ordering one from whatever monument company, and we realized we're just going to fill up like every other cemetery if we don't kind of get on top of this. So we've spent the last 5 years learning stone design and cutting, carving, polishing, engraving. And so we built a little shop in our backyard here. And so now all of these are made here, or else we use a family-owned foundry to get our bronze plaques from. But it's pretty cool. Like all of these basalt pieces come out of housebound in the Squamish area all the way up to Pemberton. And then we otherwise work with sandstone, marble, and a few kinds of granite that we get from the Gulf Islands and Vancouver Island. There's amazing quarries available that it kind of worked out really in our favor, because during COVID, all of the overseas manufacturers and producers of granite, typically it's granite, cemetery monuments, a lot of them shut down. And the companies that make the saw blades or the chains that their equipment use, they shut down too. And so there was kind of like a 1 to 2 year lapse on any availability of stone that really jammed the big corporate providers. But because we were already shopping from our backyard, it was uninterrupted. So it kind of blossomed into us doing a lot of work for other cemeteries. Like yesterday I was at the Brooklyn Cemetery all day doing some work for them on maybe some memorials and things. So it's kind of neat, because the cool thing about a basalt boulder is they're all one of a kind. They're like a fingerprint, right? There's no identical natural stones out there. And so that's been a neat way to kind of help families express themselves as well. It's tough, I know. Yeah. So this is the beginning of our green burial garden here. And so there's a Green Burial Society of Canada that has laid out the criteria. It is basically like the organic stamp for burial. The first thing that comes to mind is people don't want the embalming. That's totally understandable. But then the other criteria is that they can't have like a traditional headstone. Oftentimes the body is simply bathed and then wrapped in like a cotton or bamboo shroud. But there are some caskets in here, like a simple pine made or cedar made casket, or else there's a type of casket you can get that's a woven seagrass that's quite nice. And so all of the people laid to rest here, they purchase a reservation to the Green Burial Garden, and then we assign the next available burial site at the time of need. And that lets us conduct the burials from the east side here, making our way to the west. And so the future of this garden is that it's actually all going to be replanted and forested over time. And so we just completed this first phase where we're going to have this gathering space. It's almost done here. It's not going to be gravel. We're working on a cool type of paver stone that'll complete the gathering space here. But then the memorials, for the most part, are these driftwood communal memorials. And so we do the little bronze nameplate on it, and that acknowledges the kind of 10 or 15 people laid to rest in the vicinity. And then the first stage of our planting plan goes right over top of those burial sites. And the reason that we chose the driftwood is it's kind of naturally temporary anyways. Like we'll have that piece for, maybe another 5 years, and then we can remove the nameplates and put them onto some other kind of feature that we'll have for 10 years or so. And then it'll just kind of keep evolving over time, and it's kind of symbolic of what nature is doing all of the time. And then the idea is that by the time that we complete this garden, we want to kind of bring the woodland up onto the grounds here, and we'll have like the gathering space at this end. We'll have kind of a meandering pathway throughout, and some little seating nodes for visitors to just kind of spend some time here and reflect.
So this is probably the best area for our butterflies.
Yeah. Yes, this is probably the best area for the butterfly release.
So this was a nice surprise today. Hello. We could go right into the gravel pad there.
Okay. So, meet my painted lady.
Hello, ladies.
And they're probably 5 days old, and they need to fly, and they will be flying north. They came, originally, painted ladies come from the northern Mexico, southern states, and it takes them naturally about 4 or 5 generations to get here.
Oh, wow.
And they keep on going to Peace River, so wherever. Now I saw a lot of thistle, long walkways going that way, and I had some thistles on my lawn, and when they came through, they laid eggs on the thistle.
Oh,
And
is that
so
the
they're-
foam thing?
Pardon?
Is that the little foamy thing that you see sometimes, or what do the eggs look like?
Just tiny turquoise.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring up. And they will lay eggs on plantain, and I have pots of plantain and hollyhock, and now I've got second generation from the other butterflies that I had.
Wow.
And so we'll just put this down. I found out that the ground level is warmer. So when you see a butterfly on the ground, it's because it's gathering warmth so that it can do its processes. And when they open up their wings, they are getting their solar panels. They collect. Look. There's a western swallowtail. It's just
Oh, nice eye. Wow.
through. I saw 2 others come through as you were talking before.
Oh, nice.
I'm sorry.
No, that's head on a swivel. I love
You're allowed
that.
to be excited about butterflies.
So they are here, and those western swallowtails and Anna swallowtails, they live here. This is their permanent home, and they need alders and poplar to lay their eggs on, and they overwinter as chrysalis. And it's May when the rhododendrons bloom. That's when they come out, and a blackberry patch or the rhododendrons are just wonderful places for them, and they're quiet. They stay, and you can take pictures, and they don't mind you coming closer. Now these, they travel, and they, we will be taking them out and letting them go because they need to find mates. Some of these are females and some are males, and they give off pheromones, and so I hear that within 5 miles they will be able to get their scent and will be able to connect.
Wow.
And David Attenbury had pictures. The painted lady lives all over, on both continents, up to the Arctic and Antarctic don't have them, but otherwise they are found. So sometime in fall, the last generation doesn't grow its sex organs, and all of a sudden they just all lift up and go to the stratosphere, and in 5 days they're back down in the United States, Mexico. And so David Attenbury got that and pictured it with balloons and so on. They had heard these pilots say that they went through clouds of butterflies and other insects and stuff, and so then they put the balloons up. So that's how I got the information, and there is still so much unknown about butterflies and other pollinating insects. And the biggest thing for me is that people don't use pesticides, and it doesn't matter. Just plant a plant. In White Rock, I was at a friend's place, and she was on the 3rd story. She had some flowers like that on her patio and other flowers. And along comes a western swallowtail and lands on her 3rd floor. So, as in a small apartment, you can still do something. And what else do you want to know? Okay, the other butterflies that are here. In wintertime, on a sunny day, you will see the morning cloak, and they will need to sit on the edge of something warm and heat up and get moisture, and then they go back into hibernation. And then in spring they will lay their eggs on poplar trees, alder trees. And there it goes again.
Oh, easily distracted by butterflies.
Did you say?
Well, this
did
is
you
a
I think
big-
you want a t-shirt. You saw it first there.
Okay, so when you're going, walking anywhere, like Fleetwood Park, if you go where there's a damp seat along the walkway, you go from to where there's flowers to something damp. Most of the butterflies need to take sulfur minerals from the ground, and so streams are important, water edges, and the male blues that are flying now will take the sulfur. The males need the minerals to finish off making the sperm, and then the naturalist in Chilliwack, Dennis Knock, who's done a lot of study and so on, he got a western swallowtail. They were mating, and then with the mating, the male puts the chastity belt on the female so that it's his sperm that does
the deed.
propagation. And the butterflies, these guys won't just lay eggs on, leave all their eggs. They will do eggs here and eggs there. And the other thing, a plant that is really important is stinging nettle. 5 of our butterflies need stinging nettle, and when I look for caterpillars, the red admiral and the Larkin's admiral and Compton's tortoiseshell on the stinging nettle, they will fold their leaves, and sometimes they nip them, so the satire nips the top so that it falls down, and they start eating, caterpillar starts eating from the bottom, and the poop or frass falls out, and so they've got a sheltered area. And if so that's what I look for, because they make nice. And then the moths, instead of folding the leaves along the vein, they will roll up, and they're tiny little caterpillars of the moth, but their string or whatever, their web is even stronger than the butterflies. They really make strong ones. So
Did you
now-
say these are only 5 days old?
Yeah.
So they come out of the cocoon kind of full grown, or will they?
Well, out of a chrysalis, they come complete. And the western swallowtail drops out of the bottom. I don't have the chrysalis
I have a
with
picture
me.
of it here. The
Oh, have you?
chrysalis, yeah.
Okay, then you can pass it. Okay,
That's the name of
a
the
monarch.
war machine that they did their
Oh, that's
model.
right.
Yeah.
Chrysalis is,
I have a monarch.
So what is the lifespan of
what?
is the lifespan of these?
Okay. As a live one, it depends on how their circumstances are. Like there's birds that will fly and catch them or whatever. But say from egg to this stage, the whole life cycle will be a month and a half to 2 months. Like I've got the second generation coming now. It takes 4 or 5 days, and all depends on the temperature. Now I put a bunch of them in my girlfriend's greenhouse. It was hot, moist, and they hatch within 5 days. But most of the time, it takes 8 days to 10 days for them to hatch from the chrysalis. And so these guys eat, and then they start spinning on something near the top, and they hang as a J-hook for a day, and then you'll see them, the outside of the caterpillar just go on a chrysalis' neck. Actually, it goes from the bottom to the top, and you'll see this black skin of the caterpillar near the top, and then 8 to 10 days, and they come out. And before they come out, the chrysalis changes color. It gets almost, you can almost see the iridescent colors through, and then they come out the bottom, and they're all crunched up. And within these guys, within 15 seconds, the fluid that they have inside just expands them wings, and the wings then need to, and when they expand, if they're in a corner, their wings will dry up in whatever shape they're in. So I like to make sure that they hang. And so it takes about an hour for them to dry. And now they are getting warm. This is a good place so that they'll probably just take off. So I've got 10 butterflies, and I hope some of them are quiet enough that you will be able to pass them to each other. So this is
The menu.
like say, yeah, the menu is right. And so you can see the proboscis. You see them. And okay, now how does a butterfly taste?
Taste.
I've never eaten one.
So it's doing, the proboscis is out, so they're hungry. And the proboscis, when they hatch, is in 3 or 4 pieces, so they have to in and out, in and out. And you see the red dots that are in there. That's part of the fluid that has been released, so that they will be lighter weight. Just look at them.
So those little dots are from their wings, the moisture from their wings?
Yeah, it's expelled. No, it expanded the wings and then expressed anally.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can see them trying to.
Is what they let you eat?
About 5 days. Going back to
It's not in Canada, but we're working on it. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, we actually, so it started in yeah, so he's been here twice now. Yeah.
but think with the rock.
We were like stinging nettle.
These guys will use stinging nettle, but the others use stinging nettle. Like the Milbert's tortoiseshell uses stinging nettle, and they are groupies. So they lay eggs on one stinging nettle plant, and you'll see all kinds of caterpillars on the stinging nettle. But when they come out, they're gorgeous. And if the females don't want to be aren't ready, look at how that one has its tail up. It keeps its tail up. Yeah. And then otherwise they go back to back and are there for a period of time. Oh no, they're butterflies. They're in the Lepidoptera, and the only likeness is that they travel, go back down and come up this way in generations.
Sounds like what we did at home. I was like, I didn't invent this. Yeah, go figure. The latest hot thing is going back to what we always did.
Yeah, older.
Yeah.
I've lived overseas. They have communities where they would have like single families. It's kind of what you're doing. It's so
Yeah, well, that is the memorial.
So it's like who else did this?
Walk over.
Do you see all the hair on the butterfly? And those flowers over there are just right for them.
Would you say these are, will they grow anymore? This is them.
Well, you tell us
This
how
is
to take.
them. I mean, and
there
they're
you go.
a butterfly. They're a butterfly because they've got knobby.
There you go.
He's gone. Did we need for that, some of them to go?
Oh, they're all to go. And then you just say, blessings go and multiply.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got a name for
Long
them.
live and multiply.
There you go.
Okay.
Pretty eager to get out.
You said they have like a 5-mile
Just
scent?
one by you.
Oh. 5 miles scent? Yeah, so are they, yeah, what would be their territory?
What? Their territory.
5 miles?
Pardon?
So it tastes good?
Yeah, maybe
Do you want to take the whole,
There you go. Hello, buddy. Oh, you're looking beautiful.
you taste good.
That's what I
so,
do.
you know, I have the grandchildren put sugar water on
Oh, that's a great idea. Smart.
and they stay longer.
Nice.
Did you get one?
He used to hang out with me, this guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's not flying
Are
away.
they anywhere? You're going to have to take him home.
He's coming home with me.
Can you tell male and female?
The
Gotta get a
females
name for you now.
have bigger eyes. This is a female. Her body is bigger and
Up you go. Oh, he went back in the box.
That one is just sort of circling around us.
okay, so
What's your
they're on
steps?
the ground. That's good.
What's your step?
Okay, so that's a running shoes have sweat on them.
No.
Well,
Hold it up.
yes, I mean, yes, for rain or make themselves so you can see the positive feeding.
So if you were to touch the wing, that would damage them. Right?
Pardon?
If you were to touch the wing, that would damage them. Or permanently? If you were to accidentally touch the wing.
Well, there's lots of scale on the wings, and you like when they're in here, I try if they're starting to really move around, I'll put a towel on them so that they don't lose the scales.
Wow.
They're pretty.
Yeah, they're pretty, eh?
Yeah. Oh.
There's another one over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just put your finger in front, maybe it'll climb on.
Oh, I guess that's it.
Gotta protect her.
This one's going away.
Yeah. Okay, you're maybe some people haven't seen them yet.
They're
Like to
beautiful.
Pass it around.
So what is this that you've got on
Oh,
this?
I've got sugar water and orange juice.
So he said, this is great.
Yeah.
Can you tell the girls from the boys just by looking at them like this? Can you tell the girls from the boys just by
Yes,
looking
okay.
at them?
I look at their bodies.
Okay.
If the males are slimmer,
Oh, okay.
and the females
Isn't
have
that usually the
have-
case? It's sickening.
It's pretty
Okay, yeah. There you go. It's the usual case. It's just the usual case, isn't it?
That's beautiful. They love them.
Have you seen this first phase of the reforestation here?
No.
These are all from the UC native planting list. All perfect for our climate.
Very well engineered.
Yeah, so our most recent burial was Mr. Rager, and his wishes was to have a tree planted above him.
Yes, I remember the plot that was there.
That's right, yeah, you saw that,
Yes.
right? So his wife is thrilled. She and I agree with her. He has the best spot in the whole
Yeah.
on the whole grounds here.
I'm gonna have to fight him for it when I leave. Step outside.
Yeah, we saw them for weeks after.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it's no oasis here. So it makes sense.
Yeah, nice. It's a little calmer at the back of the property here.
Maybe 16.
Yeah, 16 is a little busy.
Shall we continue with the tour?
Sure.
I think we'll just cut through here. And
Sure. Okay.
Some wonder about the interaction between the bees and butterflies. And
Yeah, who knows?
All the other
They
insects,
seem to
you
get
know.
along. I haven't seen a bee fight anybody.
yeah, my money would be on the bee, I think. Any fruit trees?
Yeah, they're all up by the office. Yeah. So you kind of get a good outlook on the whole property from here. You get a little bit of everything. So in that corner, the cross statue is a little Orthodox community that they were kind of a hybrid. They liked the idea of green burial, but they also wanted a place for the members of their church to be laid to rest. And so they're at the far west end of the green burial garden, and they're going to start filling up the plots that way. And then we'll just kind of see where the forest goes to in the future. And then beyond that is our yin and yang, our harmony cremation garden, which is the same idea as the glen over there, where the flowers mark the space where the ashes were spread. And then there's plantings throughout there. These are our second generation of memorial trees, so these are all cherry blossom, and we're training them so that in the future the canopies will combine, so that cherry blossoms only last for like 2 weeks, but that will be an amazing 2 weeks where it'll be kind of like a tunnel arboretum is the vision for those. And so these are all sponsored by families. Most of them are cremated remains, but the last one we did here, you see this guy in the middle, he's a couple years younger than those ones, where there was a woman laid to rest in a shroud under that one. So what we're working on over here is those are some families, and so those are just kind of families who wanted something really custom. For one of them, we built a dining table and stools out of a rare granite that comes out of Norway, and that was to kind of symbolize their family dining table where they lost their son unexpectedly. And so we were working with them for 2 years, kind of working on what does memorialization look like for you, and they just kept coming back to like the happiest times were as a family gathered at the dinner table and just kind of talking about our days and stuff. So we kind of built a recreation of that. And then at the other end, the fellow I'm working with, he is a born-again Christian, and we're building replicas of the tombs that you would find on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And so I don't know if you look up a photo of the Mount of Olives, and it's these tombs go back hundreds of years, maybe longer, and they all just kind of sit though. They're just you just walk down these narrow little laneways, and there's just all these tombs. And I guess I don't know if it's because the mount is made out of rock and they couldn't really dig into it, but otherwise that's what families have used there. And they'll rotate, like somebody will be laid to rest in the tomb for 100 years, however long, 200 years, I'm not sure, and then their relatives will come and disinter the remains and then lay somebody else in there, and they add the lid of the tomb becomes like a family tree. It carries the lineage of that family's blood. So that family might use like 3 or 4 tombs for centuries. And so like pretty fascinating stuff. So yeah, like our hope is that, you know, in 50 or 100 years, like I really hope that this property is kind of like almost as much of a sculpture gallery, kind of like a museum that tells the story of our individual lives, and it reflects some of the communities that make up our city today and the values that we hold today. And I hope that this is a place that people can come to and not necessarily need to have a loved one laid to rest, but they just kind of come here and kind of process whatever's going on in your life, you know. There's a lot of people who kind of they struggle because they have their own responsibilities. We all have our own obligations, whether it's with work, whether it's your family situation, maybe it's a relative who isn't doing so well that you're kind of caregiving for them, and there's a lot of pressure on a lot of people, and there's not so many outlets. Like, not a lot of people have the option of turning to medication or taking a leave of absence from work and stuff, and so we really just hope that we can support people on their own journey, whatever that looks like. And it's kind of nice that the only equalizer is that we don't put up with jerks. Like, I don't care who you are or what you believe, but if you're rude to me, you can take a hike. Sorry, because otherwise, like, people have enough going on. If you're gonna be rude to us, like, I don't want that negative energy out here on the grounds. Like, so other than that, it's a beautiful kind of reflection of this little mosaic that is our city right now. So yeah, so I thought maybe we could just go up through here to and kind of make our way back. Now, actually, before I get us walking again, there's somebody mentioned to me about organic reduction. Is anybody here familiar with organic reduction, or human composting is the colloquial phrase for that? So this is kind of a newer development. This was legalized in Washington State, just beside us, was the first to legalize it about, I think it was May 2020, so just 5 years now. And the idea behind it is that it basically accelerates the natural breakdown of your tissues that would happen in the earth. But when you bury remains, your body is kind of, it all depends on the conditions that you're laid to rest in, and that's temperature, that's the material of the soil, where like clay is different from sand, is different from organic topsoil, and then moisture levels. So in the Pacific Northwest, if somebody was laid to rest in like regular soil, you know, maybe after 7 years or so, like all the soft tissue is gone, and then you've got the skeletal remains that over another like 10 or 15 years, those will break down as well. And then you have your casket, that'll slow things down depending on what you lay to rest in. So organic reduction is the concept of you lay somebody to rest in a vessel full of organic material, and it's basically, I don't know the formula, that's the secret recipe of the service provider, so they guard it very closely. It took a lot of them 7 to 10 years to design, but the nutshell is that they use straw as an insulation, and then you have like bark mulch or wood chips, which is kind of just organic material to help feed the microorganisms, and then you add water and mycelium, typically like a mushroom blend. And what happens is actually you're giving your own flora the ideal conditions to accelerate the breakdown of your soft tissue. And so the straw is an insulator, and the vessel is sealed, so the remains are laid to rest in like a kind of like a funeral ceremony, a laying in ceremony we call it. And then your flora, when you have that microbial activity, it heats up the remains. And so you, like, I don't know the exact temperature, but say like 100 degrees or something, like the flora consume all of your soft tissue, and then they're monitoring the outside of the vessel because they see that once the temperature starts to drop, and that's after about 3 to 4 weeks, then they know that the soft tissue has largely been consumed. And so they also rotate the vessel to kind of help aerate it. So they have an airline input and like a moisture egress output. So in essence, once the bacterial, the microbial activity starts to decline, the temperature's coming down, then they tilt the vessel and onto like a conveyor belt sifter, and then they kind of remove any surgical implants that you might have, that artificial hip or knee or whatever. So anything artificial implants are removed at that stage, and then they process the remains. So it goes through, they call it a reducer, it's a grinder. They grind up your bones, which also happens with cremation. A lot of people assume that you go into the cremation machine and it's just like, push the button, ding, okay, dad's cremated. But no, you're still a skeleton, or you still might have casket components and stuff left over. And so they also grind those up and reduce it to your cookie jar. But, and then once those remains are processed on that sifter and the reducer, they go into a smaller vessel that is just fed with oxygen or air, and that lets the same microbial activity consume your bone material now, because your bones have all been ground up, and so all of the nutrient value is further consumed, and then at the same time those remains are being dehydrated. So at the end, the result is about a yard, about 3 by 3 by 3 feet of organic material. And then depending on the service provider, that might have more of like a bark mulchy kind of texture, or it could be like actual nutrient, like compost nutrient. And they typically, though, they've said that that resulting soil would need to actually be blended with regular topsoil before you could spread it in a garden or something, like a plant garden, not your carrots, but and because it's so concentrated, it would actually burn whatever tree you planted in. So it's very, very dense and rich nutrient. So a lot of the service providers in Washington, for example, they're the closest. They're the ones that we've talked to. We've gone down to meet them because we're very interested in bringing this to BC, which would be the first in Canada if that happens. But a lot of those service providers have relationships with national parks or state parks, so that the families might choose to take home like a symbolic amount of the soil, but the majority, because a yard is a significant, you're signing up for a lot there. So they distribute the soil into a forest, and that they kind of have like an allocated, maybe it's 10 acres, maybe it's 1 acre, I'm not sure, but they have like a dedicated space that is kind of earmarked as a memorial ground in the forest. It'll never be developed either, it's my understanding. It's so it all comes down to Nikki Sharma, our BC Attorney General. And so the Attorney General kind of sets the mandate for Consumer Protection BC, who is the muscles who control all of us funeral and cemetery and crematorium professionals. And Consumer Protection and the Attorney General only respond to public pressure. They don't care about businesses who are trying to do this. They only listen to the public and the community stakeholders. So like maybe the Naturalist Society, maybe the Watershed Society, it all takes pressure from the public to get them to really consider the changes. If we have reached out to the Attorney General's office and have not even received a response. Before that, it was the Minister of Public Safety and something, housing or development.
General Solicitor.
Thank you. They change seats all the time. And they didn't respond either. So as long as we're a whiny business, they can ignore us. But if there's public demand for, if you think about so going back to us having a 90% cremation rate, when I was born, 85, Mountain View Cemetery in Vancouver, city owned, 103 acres, a double depth burial plot there cost about $1,500. And that would do 2 caskets, and then they let you place cremated remains on top. Today, that exact same grave is $38,000. So, and that's a city-owned cemetery. And so, we have a shortage of space, and the plots that are left, aside from the city of Surrey, who have done a very good job of keeping the prices low at their cemetery, almost to a fault, because now everybody is burning through your inventory faster than you believe. But the cost of burial in the last 30 years has become horrifically expensive. And so I think that I'd be really curious how many people are choosing cremation, not necessarily because they want to, but because it's like they can't justify spending $20, $30, $40,000 on a funeral home and burial arrangements. And so if I think that organic reduction checks so many boxes, because a lot of the people who are already kind of eco-friendly are not interested in this. They want a resting place that people can come to visit, and you can celebrate a life lived, and there's like the interment disposition, the process at end of life is still in keeping with very environmental friendly values, but it comes at a price point that is way less than burial. It's kind of we expect it would be in the middle of between a cremation and a burial space. So like right now in the States they charge about $7,500. That's US. And so we think like we're still trying to explore about what we would be able to do this for, but we've seen some very complicated operations that would cost us, like $3 million to build, and then $500,000 in licensing fees just to the people who have invented this technology each year. Or else we've seen some like farmer type operations out of Oregon where it's like a dude is doing it in a trailer and he's got like just a rain barrel that's modified to do organic reduction, and we're like, oh, that's a little too basic and kind of weird. So we're exploring this all, but we think that it's going to take some effort to put your money where your mouth is. Like BC, especially the municipalities in the Lower Mainland, have been championing everything eco-friendly, and we want to be the greenest and the best and the friendliest in the world, and yet some of our legislation is archaic to the point it's insulting. And when that translates into costing your constituents tons of extra money for something they don't even necessarily want at such a personal time as end of life, when people are grieving and this is your last opportunity to live out your values, like we think it's kind of a no-brainer that they should be reviewing and amending, updating the legislation.
You'd think so, this would be a promotion thing for the situation that's happening at Sunnyside Acres now.
Yep.
This is an ideal opportunity for the city to be saying, let's look at other alternatives.
Great point.
And here's another one that's not available.
We've had a couple of meetings with the cemetery team, and we've suggested stuff like that. It's tricky because the cemetery people get it, but the decision makers are council, and council has never met a grieving family in their lives. And so you have this disconnect from what the needs of the population are from the decision makers, and they're both kind of detached. But yeah, that's a great point, is that I don't know if many of you know about what's happening in Sunnyside Cemetery there in the urban forest that they're proposing to take down. But how silly is that? How silly is that?
They should invite city council out here one day.
Brenda was good enough to come here before she was mayor. She came here to check us out in our early days because I had an issue with the neighbors. That she was really good, and there's another councillor who came. Can't remember his name, but
To see is to believe. Kind of thing.
yeah. And it just it doesn't take that much effort. But anything again, like when it comes to funeral and cemetery, there's kind of like this whole whoa, they would. It feels like they'd rather do nothing than risk making the wrong call and getting everybody around. That's probably what it boils down to. Yes, please, Marcel. Is a very passionate guy about organic reduction.
I started that movement in the early 2000s, so it's been a while, but at the time there was no name for it, whatever. I just was inspired by the way that funeral service were done, and it just didn't sit well with me. But the current system that the United States has, like Washington, we Canadians can go there and use it, but in order to cross the border, we must be filled with formaldehyde, which means that we cannot get the natural reduction. So, because you're filled with chemicals, it works against that purpose. But if you had a few hours left to live and you cross the border and you die in Washington, then they can do it. But on the way back, because you want to be in BC, you will have to be incinerated. You cannot cross the border as a soil because it is not recognized in BC. So, therefore, we need your help. Yesterday, I went and met with my MLA, and no matter what party your zone is, whatever, have conversation with them, letters, personal meeting, whatever works. Small lobbying, and if they know that there's interest. I myself had a meeting with the mayor of Langley Township about a year ago, just over a year ago, who told me, because of green burial, I wanted to have a conversation with it. I live in Langley Township, and it's not going to happen. There's no interest for that, you know. Well, 6 months later, there's 50 plots available, you know. So meeting your politicians have an impact. It inspires them and helps things move forward. So natural reduction, that makes so much sense to me, you know. I don't know about you, but
The beauty of it is that it's just an option. It's like nobody's forcing you to do it. So for those people who it checks all of your boxes for cost and values and less permanent memorialization, like it seems silly to withhold that, especially considering that the fellow who helped Washington legalize it, he invented their entire composting process, which has now been adopted by its 13th state in the United States. Georgia just legalized it. That guy's name is John Paul, and he lives in Abbotsford. Yeah, he's in our backyard, and he created the whole thing, and the Americans are running with it, and yet like it's homegrown talent, and that like it's just silly for us not to be doing that. So, yeah. So,
leave no trace, basically. That's what compost does.
and that would also be, you know, that would enable this property, for example, to have a life beyond our burial sites. You know, if that was a blend of conservation where the soil could be spread in, you know, like Golden Ears Park or something. I don't know. We'll find a place as a community where the soil is suitable, but we can have symbolic amounts, laid to resting gardens here, memorial plaques that are there for 15 years, and then go on to a communal feature. We're never going to throw away somebody's plaque. Like when you've walked the earth, I think you've earned the right to be acknowledged somewhere. And so we want to keep the plaques and the memorials here, but the gardens can turn over and the grounds can evolve. And then this property doesn't have to be like a single serving cemetery.
Not to mention the city needing to reevaluate their situation in 20 years to cut down more trees, right? It's a more sustainable option, right?
Yeah, so I mean that's effectively the tour. So does anybody have any questions? Anything that we covered or didn't cover today? That
Do you have do you still have your little garden going?
yeah,
Do you?
yeah. The garden is so we have an area up kind of so that house there is previous owner's farmhouse. We've turned it into our offices, but we have an area that we've earmarked. It's about half an acre that we'd like to one day have like a celebration hall and reception facility. And so in our early days, we started farming that patch of land because we thought we were going to starve to death. But it's turned into now 3 veggie gardens where we get all sorts of stuff. Like last year, we probably had about 2,000 or 3,000 pounds of pumpkins and squash come out of there. And so we just give the produce away to visitors and like the community kitchen. Sometimes the Surrey Food Bank, always kind of far away. We don't get over there as much as we used to. But again, like we originally, we just started gardening because there was no funerals and nobody, especially when COVID, wanted to hear from us. So we did really start farming because we were going to start with that. But that became our icebreaker, and then people see the gardens, and it started as conversations. And like, of course, like it was just. It makes so much sense that we all have a connection to food, but when you talk about like grandpa, grandma, or my upbringing, my childhood, and all these positive memories, like cemeteries are such a drag. Like we know nobody wants to be at the cemetery. Like it represents something so heavy and so personal and so like just so sad. It's just sad. And so having little things that that we can introduce or that we can keep going that actually give back to the community or help the environment or represent something positive at such a sad and personal time, it turns out that those go a long way.
Which is why we're so appreciative of the environmental extravaganza and the initiatives of the White Rock Natural Society. It's people come just to look at the birds now, right? and then they just happen to learn a little bit more about end of life planning, which goes a long way.
So, eat your broccoli, everybody.
Awesome. And so you might remember last Saturday was a really rainy day. We had an event scheduled that we had pollinator plants as planters to take and make, and so because of the rain, we've got about 60 left over. So we actually brought with me 2 types of pollinator plants. One is what the painted lady butterflies will rest on, and we've got some more information at the truck, which is our pearly everlasting. Sorry, since we. And then the second one is nodding onion. Both are native plants, and both have indigenous uses as well. And nodding onion is completely edible, and you can cook with it as well. So if you have the time, we were thinking on the way out, you can make yourself a small little 2-plant planter to take with you. But if there's excess plants, and if you have a planting spot, there might be an option
Cool.
to plant something here. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so if we want to head back up towards the parking lot then,
Sure.
we'll head that way. And yeah, any questions for Trevor on the way or Andrew?
Shirley, do you have your Merlin app handy? Don't tell anyone the number yet, but
I won't go into it this time because if I win again, they're going to say it's fixed.
no, you got to reap champion.